Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm pumped up because we're going to make this show all about me. Me! It's my turn to shine.
Because it's your birthday week.
It is. And the thing is we know we promised this would be a preview show, and believe me, we're working on it. The big thing we're working on is trying to get me a bloody previews. But what we're going to do is we're going to dive into my sketchbook again and see how many sketches we have. These are sketches that I accumulated from the 80s until the very last one, which I got in 92. They were put together, or I should say gotten at various conventions, shows, retailer summits, in-shop appearances, things like that. And this is an interactive podcast. So what you want to do in order to get yourselves all set up is get yourself a nice comfy chair, get yourself a nice frosty, tasty beverage, or if you're a hot beverage guy, whatever. We don't judge. We do, but, we're not going to. Anyways, go to my Facebook page, Crazy Joe Writer. It's open. It's wide open. Under photos, click the link. Under that, click albums, and then go look for my sketchbook. It'll be real easy to spot because it has a sketch of Megaton Man, which was the very first sketch I ever bought. And once you flop onto my sketchbook, I believe the last one we talked about was the No Jim Lee one, where I was at Greenberg's two-day con. This was 1991. It was the only two-day convention he ever attempted in the Twin Cities. And although Pat and I went as dealers and had a great time, and a lot of the other guys went as well, we did good on sales. But by judging by the number of sketches and stuff I got, I had a fun time. The last one was, of course, Jim Lee. He wasn't doing sketches. He was just doing autographs, although my buddy Butch did get a quick head sketch. So one of these days, when Butch finds it, we'll get it up and post it on our Facebook page or something. We don't have a blog for this podcast, do we?
Yes.
Are blogs even a thing?
Not really, but you see, we use the WordPress blog, and what it is, it posts the episode and then feeds it out to all the aggregators like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and I don't know all the things that we signed it up for, but it uses a blog to do that.
Cool. So, and then of course he's going to be digging up a Cerebus one we talked about a while back, and I've got all sorts of other sketches to share. So if you later on, if you want, you can always hop back onto my album because I have pictures from Hot Comics, Crazy Comics. I got my Supergirl art. I got some other comic miscellaneous things. You can also go look at Superhero Follies, where I tried to pick out all the memes and sketchbooks and funny things that superheroes do. I filled like 4 of those things, and then eventually I just kind of stopped doing it. But I could always start again. We're very flexible here. Anyway, so you're on the page.
I'm getting flexible because I started the yoga again, but I'm not really all that flexible right now.
Oh, I thought it was Yogi Berra. I guess I better stop laid back on the Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
And
especially when I have some
picnic baskets.
I have a big vat of chocolate-covered Milk Duds, and I just sit there and waft them down like a Life cereal. All right, slide down the middle page. The last thing you see is Jim Lee. It's between a Babs Bunny and a Animaniacs. Who's that? And right above Terry Beatty's photo, which we'll get to there. The next one up, if you don't recognize who this is, you might as well just turn off this here podcast, hang your head in shame, and burn your comics. That's all you got to do.
No, don't burn your comics. Give them to me.
Even better. Save a tree. Save air pollution. Excelsior. Stan Lee was at this convention. And I mean, you look at some of the names that they drew. I mean, Jim Lee was a big one. Stanley was a big one. John Romita Jr. was there. I have Joe Linsner was there. And of course, this was before they were super hot, as well as a bunch of other people. And of course, Stan, I was able to just stand in line and get a quick autograph. Pat went back, and I believe it was Amazing Adventures. When you open up page 1, there was a mustacheless Stan Lee talking about how great the book is you just bought. And he autographed that for me, and he wrote, "To Joe, a swell guy." So I got that going for me. And I watched the tables while Pat did that, so it kind of worked out pretty cool. Do we have a noise, or should we just go? We used to have a noise where you bing, just like a film strip.
You had this glass that you would ding, but
yeah,
broke it.
Yeah, and she's upstairs today. Let's see. Oh, that ain't gonna work. All right, we'll just fake it. Bing. The next one, we're at an MCBA show. This is I can't think of his name. Timothy Bradstreet. Just drawing a random character. And if I recall, was he sitting next to Bo Smith at the time, the only real man in comics?
Yes, he was. They were close friends, and Bradstreet went on to do, he's done tons of stuff for World of Darkness, about half of which he says he got paid for. World of Darkness, the role-playing games. He did a great series of Punisher covers when Garth Ennis was doing the books for Marvel Max.
Cool. Let's see. I lost my place. Common problem. I always losing my place, and I'm the one running the podcast here. All right. Yeah, and I for whatever reason I didn't get. I was stupid because I only collected artists. I should have had Bo just write a hey, make him talk. Have him say something. So, I mean, that's just a great character. I don't even know who it is or if anybody. Next page, Tom Grummett. This is one, he was at the con. And again, I watched the table. Pat went and had him do a Superman sketch because I think he was doing Superman at the time in 1991. Another really, really sweet little sketch. And again, these are ones back in the day, nobody really asked for sketches. You always showed up with a ton of comics, or you wanted him to do a big sketch for you. A lot of almost all these except 2 I got for free, which is really sweet. The next one is Terry Beatty, Miss Tree, which he was. Does he own Miss Tree?
He and Max Allan Collins own the character.
Because
there have been 2 trade paperbacks that reprinted the run they did at DC after they ended with their at Renegade Press, because both of them were working at DC. They brought Ms. Tree over for the Ms. Tree Quarterly, and they started by reprinting those because Max Collins says that usually you start reprinting with issue 1. Well, it took them they were new in comics when they started Ms. Tree, so when they look back on it, all they see are all you see are the flaws in your early work. And because it's not their best work, normally trade paperbacks, the first one sells really well and then it trails down, and you never get to the stuff that you really are proud of. They wanted to start with the last stuff they did. Then they're going to go back and start with issue number 1 and move forward.
I'm trying to think what was being published in 91, if that were they at first.
They were at DC. They were at DC.
Oh, DC. So they were doing the quarterlies at the time. Cool. The next one, was Mike Carlin ever at an MCBA show?
No, I don't think he was.
So this one had to have been done at one of the Chicago retailer summits, because I distinctly remember Nick Post, our old buddy, getting a Superman from Mike Carlin. And I said, Mike doesn't draw. And he goes, yeah, but he does his own version. So I went up to Mike and I said, would you draw me Superman? And he goes, but I don't draw. I said, no, but I saw your version of Superman and I really like it. And so he wrote this, Super to see you in 91. which
should
was
have got Dirk McGurk.
and that was the thing. I remember walking from one area to the other. It was me. I was with Nick. I was with Mike, and Nick got Mike talking about Dirk McGurk, and I think we were talking about action figures too. That's where, if I'm remembering it right, where somebody was like, "Well, who should we do next?" And Nick in the back of the class, Arseface class, right? But
And now there has been an R-Space figure.
I know. Well, I remember asking for
Bator.
Bator, yes. And while they never did it, I did get a Bator figure custom made, which I have a picture of somewhere. On to the next one.
No, I have a story about Mike Carlin.
Mike Carlin story. I love it.
We tried to get him for an interview. Now, when I interview people, I try really hard not to interview them on stuff that they've been interviewed on 100 bajillion times. And what has Mike Carlin been interviewed on 100 bajillion times? The Superman run, especially Death of Superman, and now that he's in the DC animated, all that stuff. So I told his agent I'd like to talk about his time at Marvel, especially his early days at Crazy when he was doing Dirk McGurk, and the stories around that, and some of the weird, funny stuff that he and Mike Grunwald did. And the agent passed it on, and Mike Carlin sent me a very nice letter back saying, "I'm sorry, my contract is that when I do interviews, I'm doing them for DC, so I can only talk about my time at DC. And I may interview him at a future date about the DC stuff if I can figure out a new angle. But I really wanted to hear those stories because he and Grunwald, they had a sketch comedy show on New York Public Cable Access. They used to do all sorts of goofy stuff. Joe, did you pick up any of this month's Marvel books where they have the in memoriam of I can't remember his name, but he was an executive?
I probably have seen it.
Well, the Tom DeFalco writes about him and says that one day this executive came into this office and said, "You've got to do something about what these idiots are doing." And DeFalco said, "Which idiots?" And at first, the guy was mad, and then he just started laughing and told a story about how two of the editors had a fishing pole with a candy bar on it and were holding the candy bar, and when people would grab it, they would reel it back up. That was the kind of stuff that Mark Grunwald and Mike Carlin did in their office. Those are the stories I want.
Is Mike still with DC?
Yes, he's in DC Animation.
Okay, so much for that. That would be a fun one. All right, on to the next one. This one I'm particularly proud of. This is a early Jay Lee. This is right about the time where he was starting to get. I think he was taking over the art for John Byrne's Submariner comic.
Yeah.
Or Namor as well. Yeah. And the weird thing is the story of how we met him. He was guest at one of Greenberg's one-day shows across from the Thunderbird. I forget what the name of the hotel is. It's still there. The Thunderbird is long gone.
Which makes me sad.
And Jay was basically walk in, and there was nobody from the con to basically direct him. Okay, here's the table. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. And fortunately, Butch came to the rescue. At the time, I would set up. The Greenberg shows were quick one-day shows usually on a Sunday. I would bring basically a carload of crap, set it up, and usually I'd make enough to pay like the phone bill, maybe half the rent for the month. Of course, for me, going to the little shows, I'd either sell stuff, buy stuff, or just find stuff for myself. Jay Lee happened to be the guest. He didn't know what was going on. Butch, Jess, some of the other Hot Comic guys, because the other Hot Comics was there as well. Basically, and again, this was pre-me Hot Comics, so I was still doing P&J. And we basically befriended him. We talked with him. He did me the Sweet Namer sketch. Of course, now he's doing really interesting covers for Red Sonja. I don't know if he's doing his own book, but he's become a cover guy. So, he's doing fine. He might even do commissions. I haven't bothered to look up. But just really cool. I know we talked to him about coming to the MCBA, but we actually asked if he wanted to go out to eat, but he had to get to the airport. The hotel, fortunately, was like inches from the airport, so he could hop a shuttle. It wasn't like he was totally abandoned. But it was kind of a neat thing. And I wonder what the con would have been like had, a guy like Butch not been there to just hang and talk and geek with him. Lord knows that Jay Lee remembers it, but obviously we do because it was one of the more interesting cons that we actually had gone to. The next one, if you turn the page, this took place in a show that Pat and I drove down to in Kansas City. A lot of guys went down there. John Nunziata was down there. The Hot Comics guys were down there. Larry Stroman was there. I did not get a Larry Stroman sketch because as far as I know, he wasn't sitting down anywhere to do sketches. But as I would wander around, and this was my version of getting gas, I'd wander around and get sketches. And so I started at one end. First off with, this is Steve Bissett, just drawing a random monster. I mean, if I had been bolder, I might have asked, hey, would you draw me, a Swamp Thing head or an alien face or whatever. Again, because I was very cognizant that these were free, I didn't really push, unless they came to me and asked, well, what do you want? But he just drew this cool little sketch. I remember talking with him about Swamp Thing, saying that I was one of these guys that was torqued off that they just killed his Swamp Thing mid-story, especially as I found more and more about it. And I said, in my comic collection, the last issue you did is there, and then I have the interview you wrote or you gave to the Comic Buyer's Guide saying what happened and what would have happened. And that, to me, is the end of my Swamp Thing. And I said, I was fair. I tried to continue beyond, but it was like I had no idea where the new guys were, and I don't envy them anything. So on the next page is representative of quite possibly one of my favorite comics of all time, other than Weapon Brown. One that I have geeked on long and hard and am dying for the next installment. This is Larry Mauder doing Mr. Spook from Tales of the Bean World. Cory, have you've read Tales from the Bean World?
Yes, I've read the whole thing.
How would you describe it to somebody?
Tales of the Bean World. Actually, the best description I ever read was it is like Native American storytelling. It sets up kind of its own little universe, gives you its rules, and then has things happen in it, which is why Larry Martyr says it's not a story, it's a process. It is a story, but it's not the type of Americanized storytelling. It's more, okay, here are these processes. What happens if something different occurs in it? How does every part of this process react? And when it came out, it was so odd and so different that really nobody quite knew how to sell it. And I believe it either started in mini comics or it started at Eclipse, but it ended up at Eclipse. And then Larry Martyr, when Eclipse went away, Todd McFarlane swooped in, bought up all the rights. Larry Martyr kind of came with it. And he got a job at Image as their marketing person. And because of that, the rights for Eclipse got really messy to the point where Miracle Man is still a mess as far as we know. But McFarlane just gave him the rights back to his character, to Bean World, and now it's over at Dark Horse, where he very slowly is still putting out new stuff. There are 4 omnibuses out, I believe, or 4 hardcover books. And I love it. And it was weird because I remember reading the first issue and just kind of, you don't read it like a regular story. It's a very different type of storytelling, but it's also easy to understand. Kids really get into it as well because it's not it's complex without being hard to understand.
I remember the first issue I picked up because I used to every year go to Dreamhaven, and I'd walk in and Al Payne would be, I'd be, well, what's new? And he goes, here, try this. Dreamhaven or Bean World, Tales of the Bean World's #1, published by Eclipse at the time, and I love it because it was just great. I mean, anything I don't think Al ever steered me wrong with something he gave me, and I read it and was like, this ain't so great. I misspoke. These last two, Steve Bissett and Larry Mauder, that was at the first Chicago Comic-Con we went to that year. Because the next one is the first one when I went to a Comic-Con in Kansas City. Same thing. It was Pat and I, the guys from Hot Comics, a lot of guys from the city went down there. This is a straight drive right down 35. And I ran around and got quite a few autographs. It was okay show. Again, this is 92. This is probably summertime. You know, little did I know I'd be owning a comic store by the end of the year. But Pat and I were just doing this for fun. I remember one thing that stuck with me and something I tried to do with when I did run a store. At the time, the hot book was Solar #10 because it came out with a totally black cover. And this was a time when the original Valiant, run by Jim Shooter, was starting to gain steam. People were starting to pay attention, starting to realize the early issues were hard to find. They went up really crazy in price. And Dan and Brian had me go all over and look at the dealers while I was going around looking for the black cover. He said, just buy it whatever price. And I ended up buying a bunch at like $6. And I said, what are you doing with them? I said, well, we need to get them to our subscribers. I said, well, what are you doing? Selling them at $6? He goes, no, we're going to give them to them at cover price. It's just we got shorted, but we want to take care of our subscribers, which was a lesson that always stuck with me. I mean, a lot of times, you know, I'll beef about, I got a hole in my collection, but then I remember, oh, that's right. I gave this series to a customer rather than keep it in my own collection. But that was always like a Thursday after New Comic Book Wednesday, because I always pull these books that I wanted to read. But if it were like the only onesie twosies on the shelf, I'd read them really fast and get them back on the shelf. So if somebody came in, they could buy it. It was more important to me to sell it than for me to read it. A little different now. The first one here is from a guy, Frankly Kurtz, goes under F. Kurtz. His independent comic was from Creepville #4. And that's a TV antenna-headed gorilla monster. Kind of a throwback to the 1950 monsters.
Joe, that's a specific monster.
Is it really?
Robot monster.
Robot monster. I don't have Creepville #4, and I wish I still did.
I could tell by the drawing. Go to your fire-breathing Google machine, put in robot monster, and if they ask for more detail, 1953, it was a unbelievably awful movie.
Oh yeah, there's the encyclopedia. You can hit images. I see it right there.
Yep, what it is.
Robot monster.
They had a gorilla suit and a diving helmet
with antennas.
And they put antenna on it. And also, if you go to the third picture, you see where he's coming out of a cave. His control panel was a chest of drawers that he would turn the knobs on.
High class. I haven't seen.
If you have not seen this movie, do yourself a favor and watch it. It is spectacularly awful.
I haven't seen such high-tech effects since I've watched Dark Star, and the control room of the spaceship were upside-down ice cube trays, and those old-fashioned test your tubes that you used to go to drugstore to check your TV tubes with.
Yep.
Brilliant. Use what you got, people. The next one is probably someone you recognize. It's one of the turtles from the Archie series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Brian Thomas doing the artwork. So it was kind of fun to run into him. Next page from What the? This is Hillary
Hillary
Barda.
Barda, who has a story in this week's Marvel's number 4, where he brings back all of the Marvel monsters. All of them.
And this is the What the version of whatever they called the Punisher at the time. I love the detail that these people put into it. The next one was Bill Reinhold, who was doing Punisher Jigsaw at the time, and he was probably confused when I asked him to draw Punisher, because I think he's a writer, isn't he?
No, he started on Badger.
Maybe I should ask him for Badger.
And when Mike Barron went over to Punisher, he brought Bill Reinhold along. Reinhold still draws indie books and stuff. Nice, clean style. His run on the Badger was so damn good.
All right, next page. Rick Stazzy, who at the time a Marvel DC artist. I just asked him to draw his favorite character, and he drew me Plucky Duck from Tiny Toons. I'll get it. Next page is, I think you recognize the character. This was Anna Marie Cool, who was doing the art for the Barbie comic book from Marvel at the time. I don't know if Barbie's a thing as much anymore. I mean, there's lots of Barbies. There's a whole aisle of Barbies at Target. But the Barbie comic was just one of those that I thought was a brilliant tie-in licensing, because you're always like, oh, we got to bring in the young kids. Well, here you got a built-in audience for this. Not to mention Barbie collectors who are a little late to the party to realize there was an actual Barbie comic book.
One other thing I would like to talk about with the Barbie comic. When the Barbie comic was going, we had Fabian Nicieza, who was transitioning from sales to writing full-time when he was there. He also dressed up like Spider-Man, because basically when he would go places, he would do Spider-Man appearances. So on Sunday, I think it was Bobby Chase dared him to dress up like Spider-Man, and he did. But it was Friday night, he'd gotten in, we were sitting around, and he was still talking sales and stuff, and he said, and there's some reason why here you guys are the biggest market for Barbie comics. And I said, I can tell you the reason for that. We have this chain, Schindler's, that I work at. And I told them not to put Barbie with the comics, put it down with the magazines aimed at younger girls, like 16 and Teen Beat and Bop and stuff like that. And we routinely sell 50 to 70 copies a month. He was like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, and we're not one of the bigger stores. So there are 13 stores, and we do that. And he said, oh, you guys are the only reason that book is still alive at this point. That and subscriptions, because comic shops are not ordering it, and our newsstand distribution is for shit. There were actually 2 Barbie comics. The first, I know one of them went to 50 issues.
That might have been Barbie Fashion.
There was Barbie and Barbie Fashion. The main Barbie comic lasted till issue 50, I believe. And it's a shame that nobody picked up the license, because there are Barbie video games and Barbie magazines. And yeah, the Barbie video games are terrible, but they sell.
Yeah. You see that now every so often. Like I ran across a run of Rainbow Bright in a bunch of comics that from Dynamite. So they're trying. Whether they sell or not depends on if they order them. And for me, when I had Hot Comics, they were natural, because I had a whole section with just kids comics. And what was great is when you went to conventions and you saw dealers blowing them out for a dime a piece or quarter piece or whatever, I just snap them all up. The last guy to do that was Tim at Comic College. I think he bought a run from me when I was doing my blowout sale a couple of years ago at the MCBA. And I said, here, I got a bunch of kids comics. I just blew him 50 cents a piece. So he could sell them at cover price. And even now when you go in, he's got a whole section cordoned off for just all ages comics.
Let's see. She drew the She inked the comic adaptation of Hook, drew Soul Searchers and Company for Claypool Comics in '95.
Which I'm freaking on, but we'll save that.
And I'm trying to see if she's still active. There's Anna Marie Cool. That's not her. There's another Anna Marie Cool.
Sounds like a pro wrestling name, doesn't it?
She did illustrations for an Oz book recently. So it looks like she's back to working in commercial entertainment. I mean, commercial art.
All right.
Oh, there's a Facebook page, The Art of Anna Marie Cool.
Which would probably be a lot cooler than she did a really nice head sketch. What's funny is when you look at some of this stuff, when you see people and they do like a little prep pencil and then ink it versus someone like Anna Marie who she just outright inked it, which to me is talent. I mean, half the time I would just spend there in a fanboy gawk watching her just put the lines into a coherent figure. It's just
there
amazing.
Is a Punisher Elvira she drew for someone.
All right. Well, Cory's there. We're going to go on to the next page.
And another Elvira.
Okay, Cory, you just mute and look at Anna Marie Cool because I want to get on to the next page.
Hold on.
Here,
Supergirl
is one of my. Yeah, I'll never get it. Here is one of my absolute favorite sketches that I've ever received. Cory, do you recognize the character?
Yes, that is Nomad.
Yep, this is from a Marvel series in 1992. Jack Monroe is Nomad, and this is it was written by Fabian Nieces, and this is artist I can't pronounce his name. He's lucky I get the first part. S. Clark Hawkbaker, and he did this incredible nuanced sketch of Nomad, and he also autographed a #1 for me as well, which I don't have any. I might still have it. Nomad's one of those books. I didn't read the whole thing, and I guess I didn't quite get the book until it dawned on me, and you might have helped me with this, Cory. It's Lone Wolf and Cub. He's kind of doing a modern version of that. It lasted 25 pages. 25 I know the characters, well, might have been pages because it just didn't last. And I know the character was put in suspended animation and was unsuspended and killed and cloned and whatever. I always thought it would be great to have another character just kind of pop up and be Nomad because there's a name attached to it. It's got a history. Whether it's the original or not, who knows? That's just me. What do I know? I only tell. I'm giving you these ideas to take my money from me. But he did a really cool one. Still at the Kansas City show. Next page, Cory. You probably recognize this guy. I can't imagine what he's doing right now. I hope he's probably pushing carts at Walmart somewhere. Yep, that is Keith Eastman. Kevin. I can't read the name. I love it when I'm Kevin looking Eastman. At this trying to read it. I should just write these down so I know who they are. Kevin Eastman. I don't know what that was he wrote. It never lasts. Sometimes you just get a sketch because you feel sorry for people. Next page. Carl Stacy doing Aliens, 1992. He was drawing Aliens at the time. Here's what's kind of interesting.
Carl Story.
I had down Stazzy. That looks like a C.
Let me take a look.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Carl Story. I'm pretty sure. Carl Story, yes, artist on number of books, including Batman, Star Trek, Dead of Honor, Aliens vs. Predator, X-Men, Wildstorm Summer Special, Terra Obscura, Tom Strong, Ocean, The American Way, and Midnighter. So it is Carl Story.
Cool. But you notice what happens is every so often, sometimes the creators will stop and look at the sketches. And when Carl did he did a quick minimalized sketch. And then after that, they all kind of started following suit. Now we're at an MCBA show on the next page. This is John Bon Jovi.
Bogdanave.
Thank you, because I know Pat calls him John Bon Jovi. And Pat was super excited to get a sketch from him. So
Which
I
is
watched
weird
the
because
table,
I remember Pat doesn't like his art.
but he likes sketches.
Oh.
And so when Pat went to get a sketch, I asked him to do the sketchbook and see if he would do one quick for me. And I watched the table. So kind of a quid pro quo when, like from earlier, where Pat would watch the table while I stood in line. The next one, Cory probably remembers because we went to Dreamhaven Books in Dinkytown to meet Dave Sim, who was doing Cerebus at the time. And as you can see how he would draw Cerebus, he'd do a quick circle and then did the rest. And then best wishes to Joe. At this time, he also signed my stupidly, I sold it years ago, real copy of Cerebus #1. So if you ever have a copy that says to Joe, proud owner of a real Cerebus one, it used to be mine. And talk to me, I may want to buy it back. He did a great sketch for Cory in the book because this was cool because you got a chance to sit and talk with him. And I
mentioned that when I read that page, what it is, it's a page where Cerebus is Pope. And Cerebus is giving a speech, and this woman's holding up, please bless my baby, please bless my baby, please bless my baby. And Cerebus stops and grabs the baby and says, bless you, and then tosses it. And the next panel is, Cerebus has taught you a lesson. You can get what you want and still not be happy.
And the little sketch he wrote in, you was funk, if I recall right.
Yep.
Which wasn't in the original book. But, yeah, this was a fun outing. And as far as I know, Greg still does things at Dreamhaven whenever he can. Obviously, COVID has effed everything up. But hopefully years from now, people listening to this podcast, well, COVID? Wait a minute. Wasn't that pandemic that fizzled out in February 2021? Who knows? Hey. Stay positive.
December
Think positive thoughts.
2022.
Cory, go back and look at some Anna Marie Cool pictures. All right,
now art is so fun now.
Now we're going to the Chicago Comic-Con 1992 with the infamous image tent. You will notice nowhere in these next pile of sketches is there actually any image sketching. Because as far as I know, these guys were not doing any sketching. I believe Pat and I told the story of how we ended up buying artwork from.
I remember Pat spent a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Pat shows up at the door and he opens it up and goes, I've been a bad, bad boy. What the deal was, what the heck? Have we talked about the image tent before?
Just bits and pieces. I don't think I'll tell you the whole story.
The deal was that this was Chicago. Wizard actually bought the Chicago Comic-Con this year, but because the con was going so fast forward that they didn't change anything. There wasn't a big. I don't even recall seeing a Wizard presence. And of course, the big thing was that Image would have all the creators there out inside an Image tent, so you could line up and sign. Rob Liefeld was going to do a 24-hour overnight signing. Tons of people, I don't recall buying a lot of stuff there with the exception of some stuff I'll talk about in a little bit. And
can I help set the stage a little more?
Oh, absolutely.
At this time, Chicago and San Diego were fighting over which was the bigger convention. And usually it would be who was going to be first. Chicago was huge. San Diego was huge. There were some years where Chicago had more people and some years where San Diego had more people. It's not like now where San Diego's the big one. It was San Diego or Chicago, and the publishers would have to be at both of them. And then Wizard bought Chicago Comic-Con thinking, all right, we're going to be able to take this to the next level. And within 2 or 3 years, San Diego had just eclipsed them, partly because the movie studios and TV studios and stuff had discovered, you've got this audience down in San Diego, but also because Wizard pissed off the comic book industry by treating the artists so poorly that more and more people said, I'm not going to Chicago. To the point where now, there is C2E2, but there for years, there really wasn't a big Chicago Comic Con. They killed one of the biggest conventions in the world. Way to go, Wizard.
I just had to go get a paraphernalia piece because I do remember, Pat and I had our own room, and then in the next room was everybody else. Nick, Dan, I don't recall if Brian was there, Dave. This is where Dave and Jess, I think, slept in the closet. Butch was there. This, we really need to talk more about this and bring Butch in because he'll probably have stories and memories. I remember going down to the image tent, and basically what it is, it was a fairly large tent, and you would get in, and there were chairs, and you would line up, and you would get in line, and they would let you, clear a row. You'd walk past a bunch of image art that was for sale. You could only bring in one or two items. Actually, one. You could allow one item to be signed. And then you could always come back next day because it was there for 2 days. And you'd walk past all this incredible art for sale, and then you would meet all the image creators. And I had one sign each book. And the only image book that was out at the time was Youngblood 1, which had sold out and was, going crazy. I remember when I got to Rob and he signed it, I said, how's it selling? I said, it's sold out. People are going crazy for it. And so he was happy to see that, even though the book is largely unreadable. Pat went back and bought some art from Mark Silvestri. I said, I got to sit there and look down his wife's shirt. Because Pat always had, alternative things. And he ended up dropping, I think we talked about it when I interviewed him in the Solo Joe. He dropped a lot of money. And I went back and I looked and I saw 2 covers for the Wolverines that Mark had did going up to issue 50. I think I dropped about $1,000 buying these 2 covers. And then because you did that, you got to go up and sit and talk with Mark and have him autograph more than just one piece. I remember the big thing is that Wilsh Portacio was there. He was announcing Wetworks. They were very happy because they just signed Dale Keown, who was going to bring Pitt. And Pat bought some Pitt art, I think he probably bought some Hulk art. I'd have to talk to him. But if you bought art, you could get more than one thing signed. And Dale wouldn't do that because Dale's like, well, I was told only you sign one. So yeah, but if I buy more from you, you can sign more. Well, I'm not sure. I don't want to get these guys mad or whatever Dale said. And so Pat was like, you'd only sign one thing. I got ripped off. And the sad thing is Pat and I, whatever we ended up buying, I think we ended up selling like at cost, like 10 years later, just to get rid of them. And then, of course, what happened? Oh, the price exploded. Pat tells stories about that all the time, how he goes online and he looks at original art and he sees, oh my God, this type of art is selling for like $16,000. He puts his piece on and then the dealers call, well, it's only worth about 3 or 4. Yeah, but you're selling it for 16. Yeah, but this piece has an extra eyelash in it or some dumb reason. So Pat knows he's being hooked. And we knew we were being rooked when we sold our artwork, but we're just to the point, like we needed the money. We wanted to get rid of it. Nowadays, I can look back and if you could time travel, just say, dude, just hang on to it. Just let it sit, let it stew. Again, this was years before the eBays. Even to this day, Pat still is befuddled by art collectors because they always want it cheap. But boy, God, when you look to see who's selling it, it's always crazy money. The image tent was a lot of fun. It was real neat. Like I said, just a hit and run type thing. I know Dave and Jess went and hung out with Rob into the early hours, and he ended up killing at about 4 a.m. because no one was there. Nobody was signing up. And so he didn't quite go the full 24, but he hung it out as far as he could. Dave, of course, being less impressed with He basically, oh God, this would be a fun podcast if I could get him to do it. But he basically critiqued the entire issue of Youngblood about how terrible the art was and the proportions were off and blah, blah, blah. And this was before people realized that Rob never drew feet. And he basically,
no, we knew.
well, basically
it was one of the jokes at the time back at Marvel, even in the late 80s, where it's like, hey, look, Rob drew a bunch of smoke around everybody's legs again.
Well, Jess basically, he took his copy or I should say Dave took the copy, Jess was recording it, and he ripped this autographed copy in half of Youngblood and threw it out the hotel window. One half landed on the ground, the other half landed on the ledge. And we're like, that was stupid. Why don't you just bring it back to Hot Comics and charge somebody $30 for it? I'd rather just rip it in half. But then meanwhile, down on the ground, some kids found half the comic. Oh man, here's half the comic book. Oh, let's find the other half. And I didn't have the heart to say, dude, it's on the ledge like 50 feet above your head. So, but that was just, what did they know? They were scrubs. They got the hang for free. The next day, we lined up to go in the tent to get our next round of autograph stuff. And some guy was at the front saying, hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I go, who was that? It was Todd McFarlane. He stood in front of the tent, shook everybody's hand as they walked in. And then everybody lined up. The event was supposed to start at 10. Well, here we are. The image guys were probably just hung over and didn't show up. I don't know for sure. I'm just saying that because they didn't show up until later. Todd sat and basically did a Q&A and talked for the entire con or the entire moment waiting for the guys to come in. This is the infamous, hi, Rob, where Butch got there. And we were fairly far back in the line, so we couldn't hear what Todd was saying. And Butch, meanwhile, he would stand up and look out the window. Hi, Rob, or look at the entrance. Hi, Rob. As soon as the line started moving, because everybody was in place and you get your autographs, Butch got up and left. It's like, you didn't even stay to get the autographs. And Pat and I were like, we'd have you autograph one of these for us. Yeah, nah, I got better things to do. I don't want to do this. So the rest of the con, whenever we would run around, and if I'd see, like, there's Butch across the way, hi, Rob. And he'd look back, hi, Rob. And I always tell the story where that happened, where we were in what I would call the mini alley, artist alley, and that's where a lot of my sketches will come from once we get rolling into them. And I go, hi, Rob. And this guy looks up and jerks his head toward me, and then Butch is way on the other side. Hi, Rob. And the guy looks back, hi, Rob. And his head is like getting whiplash. And finally realizes we're not talking to him. It was Robert Ingersoll, the lawyer that did the law is an ass column for Comic Buyer's Guide. And I don't know if to this day he ever knows it. I know I sent him an email explaining it, but it was just serendipity at the time, I remember going through the dealer's room. I do remember there was a dealer in like one of the corners of the hallway. And this is basically in a hotel, not a convention. So it's like you go in the parking lot. This is the image tent. You go over into this ballroom. This is the artist row. There was a corner where the guys who sell imported Godzilla type figurines were there. And I remember Pat blew a lot of money on them and I bought some pieces as well. But for me, I basically spent time with my sketchbook running around looking at people. How much time do we have here, Cory?
We have about 10 minutes.
All right. I will get through the con sketches at Chicago, and then I think we'll end it. And then we still got a good fourth of my book left. And again, we're barreling towards not only the fall MCBA show, but eventually when Pat and I end up buying the comic shop. So, okay, your next one, if you had flipped the sketch from the Dave Sim one, you're probably staring at someone you recognize. Spoon! Yes, Ben Edlund was there. And he did a quick sketch for me of the Tick. And I got to ask him the immortal question, will there ever be a Tick number 12? And he goes, no, I there's a lot of money being in the TV show. I'll be there.
Yeah, and let me tell you the TV shows he has worked on since he drew you.
Yeah.
The Tick, of course, Firefly, Angel, Venture Brothers, Point Pleasant. He was the showrunner on Supernatural from 2006 to 2013. Worked on Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Revolution, Gotham, Powers, and then was in charge of the Tick series on Amazon. So I don't think he's going to go back to drawing funny books.
No. Next page. You probably recognize her because I know a lot of us are in love with her. This is from Sandman Death, done by Jill Thompson. Now, this was one that was interesting because Jill, was kind of, I think she was trying to decide how much effort to put in the sketch. Because if you look back, you see I've been getting just quick head sketches, which was fine because even Dave Sim at the time, he told, if you're a creator artist, have a standard head sketch ready to go because that's the norm.
Yeah.
Someone's going to come up on a sketch, give them a quick head sketch. And you're going to see in a couple of pages people who did. There's people who had it. I mean, way back in the first part of the episode where, well, I think it was in the previous fill-in, John
Romita Jr.
had a quick Daredevil sketch. I asked him to do his favorite character, and it might have been Daredevil, but he just banged it out, which was cool. So Jill has basically spent a little time looking through my sketch, and she found the Neil Gaiman sketch. And I think she was a little gobsmacked and maybe a little intimidated because she's like, wow, if Neil did that, I got to do something good because what if maybe he sees it later on? And she drew me this very beautiful death sketch, which I absolutely love. One of my tops in this particular book, even more so than the Neil Gaiman one because I just love the character. So that was very, very cool.
And Jill is a sweetheart.
Yeah, I think, did we invite her? Yeah, we invited her.
We had her 2 years in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember I invited her or tried to get the ball rolling to get her to come to the show. So I had a little hand in that, and then the con guys cemented the deal. Next page, some cat probably never heard of, Joe Quesada. At the time, he was doing the Ray for DC. And these were two of the big guys that everybody was lining up to get, and they basically, I think, just drew the same sketch. The next one was next page, Jim Palmiotti, and doing Ghost Rider, which he might have been doing in '92. I'd have to go back and look.
No, he was not.
So maybe it was just
Palmiotti's an inker, mostly.
So and he was just doing
now
his
he works with
favorite.
His wife, Amanda Connor, on a lot of stuff.
So, again, Cory, when we get to the 10-minute mark cutoff, I'll just keep going until we're ready. Now I found somewhere interesting. I went down the steps where they said, this is Underground Alley, kids only. And I went down.
I doubt they said kids only.
Well, maybe they were trying to teach them something because Lord knows the first person I ran into I knew. Cory, tell the people who this is.
That is Cherry. Her initial last name was Pop-Tart, but he got sued by Kellogg's, so he removed the Pop-Tart. He also got a very threatening letter from Archie, so he changed her design a bit. Larry Wells doing Cherry. This was part of the porn boom of the late 80s, early 90s, except he was able to bring in, he had, what was that, Cherry's Jubilee, where he had other creators doing stuff, such as Neil Gaiman doing a Cherry story. The stories themselves, they're just porn. They're just porn. Yeah. But Larry's art is so charming and so nice that even he draws some of the most vile stuff, not as vile as Wendy Whitebread Undercover Slut, but he draws it with such charm. And I mean, look at this. This is very Archie-like, very sweet. You could see this character, on an animated TV show, except it wouldn't get broadcast anywhere.
No. Next page. You
By
probably
the way,
are.
Larry Wells still doing Cherry, kind of self-publishing it and selling it on his website. And if you are friends with him on Facebook, he's on the road traveling to deserts and odd places all the time. He's a very interesting guy.
On the next page is another well-known character Cory probably doesn't recognize, so I'll just continue. This is Jesus, a.k.a. From the New Adventures of Jesus by Frank Stack, going under Fool Heart Sturgeon. And he's written and drawn and published his hysterical Adventures of Jesus comics for over 40 years. way back, starting in 1962. The last bit he's done, as far as I remember, is 2006. There was a book from Fantagraphics, which you should still be able to find cheap if you want to pick it up. The next one.
He also he was also the artist on one of my favorite books ever, and that is Our Cancer Year, which was the book by Harvey Pekar and Joyce Brabner about when Harvey Pekar got cancer. He drew the whole thing.
Which is very sobering. If you've ever been scared about what it's like, this knowledge is power in this case. I recommend picking that book up and reading it, even if you have to just get it from the library or something. The next one was a character, Snappy Sammy Smoot, who appeared in various underground comics way back in the 60s and 70s. The last, I think, published was a very hard to find one-shot from self-published from 1995, which I think I have a copy still in my eBay store if anybody's interested. And just another, for how a teenager got away with buying underground comics is still one of those mysteries that I'll never quite understand because, good Catholic mom, she found my cherry Pop-Tart collection. I don't think she read it. She just looked at the covers. What is this? Oh, they're collectible, Mom. Oh, okay. That's all. I still got them.
Skip Williamson passed away in 2017. So much good stuff. One thing that people may not know, he did all of the courtroom sketches for the trial of the Chicago 7 because he was good friends with Abby Hoffman. He also worked on porn mags.
I'm shocked.
Such as Gallery, where he was the art director of Gallery magazine. And in 1974, he was the founding art director of Hustler. He then moved over to Playboy. And Joe, do you remember the Playboy Funnies section?
Not as much as I remember Hustlers, but
Playboy had a Playboy Funnies section, which was about 8 pages of comic strips, usually by underground artists and stuff, and that was all because Skip Williamson came over. That was a feature that lasted through the 80s until he left the magazine. And you know who has not left us, Joe?
Before we get any farther, I'll let you know these underground artists were very happy to talk to someone who actually read the stuff. I have a feeling a lot of people bumbled downstairs and didn't quite know what the hell they were bumbling into. So I know these guys were at least like, oh, thank God somebody's actually reading our stuff.
Well, and another thing about undergrounds was, first off, undergrounds were thought of as very 60s.
Oh, yeah.
That was a hippie thing.
I remember this is 1992.
Yeah, and the people who bought undergrounds weren't comic fans. They bought them at like record stores and what they used to call head shops. Joe, what was a head shop?
A head shop was a place that sold basically drug paraphernalia. They didn't sell the drugs because that would be illegal, but they got away for selling the paraphernalia because it was always dual use. The same guy who rolled a joint could use that to roll tobacco. That pipe, oh yeah, it's a bong. Yeah, but you can use it to smoke tobacco. And this was a natural place for the counterculture, and that's pretty much where underground comics boomed and bloomed. And I was fortunate because where I bought them, most of mine were through Twin City Comics and also Greg Ketter's various stores, The Complete Enchanter and later Dreamhaven. So I had access to these. I knew who they were, and I was able to buy them without too much fuss. I always tell people I learned more about sex and drugs from Freak Brother comics than I did anything school or books my parents would read this and come ask us if you have any questions. We got to go. Or anything I learned from these guys, our sponsors.
Wow.
Figured I'd
Joe jumped in.
I know. I figured we were.
Since this is mostly your episode.
Yeah. And I still got a good. I got a hell of a lot of stuff still to go. We haven't even gotten to that fall's MCBA with Kurt Swan or the second Peter Krause I got or Adam Hughes, but it's coming. So that will probably be saved for an actual fill-in for the future. So
you know what else is coming, Joe?
What?
A bunch of podcasts by me, like these.
Whee!
And now, because this is kind of a fill-in, but not really.
Not really.
Joe, what's going on the eBay?
Well, to be honest, folks, if you want to peel back behind the screen, we're doing this one the day after we did the previous one. So not a lot of time to sell some stuff. I did sell a Total Marts Disneyana update from my old shop, number 33. I do have a bunch online, really cheap. They're fun because even though the prices and all that are probably way outdated, it does give you a quick glimpse of what was available at that time. The one thing I did sell was a set of Horrorwood 1 through 4 from Ape Comics 2006. This was by Brandon Terrell and Brent Schoonover. And a couple of the issues were autographed by Brent. This was inspired by Frank Miller's Sin City and the cartoony style of Batman Adventures. Mixes sex, humor, horror in a blend of mayhem and fun. It was told in a black and white and red style, and definitely worth picking up. The issues aren't terribly expensive. If you luck out and end up at a comic show where the creators are, you could probably pick one up. And there are books, might still be in print, as well as a director cut DVD book. It's a little bit more expensive, about $25. So now, when we're on the eBays, one thing I really like doing is sharing just with other sellers. If you're an eBay seller out there, send me a quick note, either through eBay or send it to Cory. He'll pass it on. I mean, that's how we got a hold of our friend Tori at Twin City Comics, the guy who does his niche is getting the stars to photograph covers of the books they're on, which is brilliant. And so if you go to Twin City Comics, you can see all the different things he has. But I do want to call out two people.
By the way, I want to point out, he's getting Harrison Ford to autograph. And I imagine Harrison Ford, because he's one of the grumpiest men living, a lot of his time will be, the hell's this?
That'd be funny. And he must be doing something right, because he's got over 13,000 positive feedbacks. So, and I know the gift he sent me is very cool. But write this down, Cory. HOLLRIDE-0. Holly Ride-1. That's my daughter, Holly Ryder. She's getting the eBay fever. She's not doing comics, although I told her, I can help you out. But she set up my photo lab. One of the things I'll talk about when we get to Freaking Geekin'. We were out going to try to hit a few thrift stores today. So go take a look if you see something. Again, if it's something you want, bid on it or buy it. Mention it was me, and maybe I'll toss in an extra something. I'm always tossing in extra things when people buy off my eBay stuff. Maybe I'll do that for you. Also, write this one down. REIVU bottom dash 11. I guess that's underscore as opposed to like a hyphen. Holly's
bottom
is a hyphen.
Dash.
Whatever it is.
Bottom dash, that's what you do when you've had $30 worth of Taco Bell and your stomach starts grumbling.
I thought it was when you follow DoorDash and steal the stuff before they can deliver it. But this is Riva, and she's been hyping up my daughter to get going on the eBay. Riva has mastered the skill of going to thrift stores and spotting those items that should not be in thrift stores. And she's doing quite well at it. And I think what happens is when she's here, she gets Holly all revved up and ready to go. And, Holly comes downstairs, sees me doing my little blur, getting my eBay store. And, there is money to be made. And since she's underemployed because, she's working in the hospitality business, I'm encouraging her to do whatever she can. So if you see any from her, check out both these guys. And again, it's not comic books, but you might see something you did. I saw somebody the other day that was a person who performed on the Jason Matheson show, and their particular store, they're doing more of a type thrift store. And you'll have to forgive me because I can't find that. I've got about 25 people in my eBay where you can save the seller. And I'm just going to take a quick peek, see if I can find them. If not, I'll blurb them next week because we're all here it is, old.school SKOOL.Toros TOROS, and they just have all sorts of vintage old stuff that's fun. They have no idea who the hell I am, so I'm not going to make a difference if you drop my name or not. Although you could say, hey, I heard it on this podcast. We always like that. Or if this is way too much for you and you just want some old-fashioned comics, because I spent all day Saturday thinking we were going to have a snowstorm and dying and up to our blizzards and what's it and ice and whatever, but we didn't. So I eBayed. Crazy, KRAYZ, come get some.
I hate to be so Minnesotan about this, but last night I'm at the group home getting ready to go to bed. And my phone gives a little bing. Oh, I have a notice. And it's the weather app I have on my phone. Snow is going to start with winter storm warning, blah, blah, blah. Snow will probably start falling within 3 hours and 40 minutes. Wow, that's incredibly specific, phone. And I woke up and there were flurries.
Yeah, I did the same thing this morning.
Now, normally this is where we would do freaking and geeking, but we recorded yesterday.
Well, I've got one of each.
You know what I've done since yesterday when we recorded?
Went to work and came home.
And watched a bunch of Ring of Honor wrestling, which I love. So I guess I'm freaking on the fact that I didn't get much sleep at work and geeking on Ring of Honor.
Yeah, for me, I'm freaking because everybody thought the world was fucking falling. And depending on where you were, I mean, I'm looking at some of my friends on Facebook and they're like, oh my God, we got 300 piles of snow because the storm passed well south of us. And the lake effect snow was way up on the North Shore, where lake effect snow is basically because of the way the winds are blowing, it gathers all the moisture and it dumps it as snow or rain, mostly snow, on the shores. That's why we have a great ski area up there. But we got nothing. There was no freezing rain. There was no ice. My wife went out to a friend's last night, go sit in her hot tub. So yeah, no, it was kind of, everybody's freaking and nothing happened. Geeking, we were going to go do some thrift store shopping today. I say we were going to because then all of a sudden at 9 a.m, I hear on my door. Now, the last time somebody pounded on my door with any type of alarm, their car had died right out front of ours. And while Chris and I were busy trying to get our winter gear ready and find our jumper cables, one of the neighbors drove by and was helping them. So that was cool. So I'm waking up and I'm thinking, God, do I want to answer this? All right. Got to find my phone, turn off the alarm. I open it up and I see a truck driving away. I'm like, oh, there's a box delivered. So not for me, though, for the kids. And then before we were going to take off, the kids are like, oh, we got to go stop at Target and pick up our orders. I'm like, but we were going to go geeking today. So I had, Cory, when Cory and I geek, we geek. So I just said, okay, well, I want to get up to Forest Lake. I stopped up at Remix. And let me just find the information there. Yeah, you go to Facebook, Remix, REMIX. 255 Highway 95, Forest Lake, Minnesota. Lots of records, lots of comics. He's a small store, and he's always churning his stuff. So if you go there one week, the next week it's either gone or it's probably down in the discount bin. I dug through the discount bin and just picked up like some Archies, a couple All-Star Squadrons, some 12-cent Batman that were damaged. I got a Strange Tales featuring the Golem. Just things I'll read and then probably eBay if I don't like them. For $1, it's good enough for me. Now, I did want to mention it, and the kids are busy upstairs playing with their coffee table, but they bought like $120 worth of records, which is really amazing, and probably he was very grateful. I just wanted to share some of the records that these guys bought. Here's Fleetwood Mac's Tusk.
At
Very
the
good vinyl.
time, the most expensive album ever made. It cost them $1 million to put that album together. And for the life of me, we could not, back then when it came out, what was it, 79 or 80?
Yeah.
Your average album, even by a big group, only cost maybe $100,000 to make for studio time and mixing and everything. $1 million.
Million.
And I remember at the time reading in, I think it was Rolling Stone, is this worth $1 million? No. Will it make its money back? Probably not.
Well, my daughters bought theirs for $12.
There you go.
Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 2. Now this is all vinyl. $12. For $5, Hank Williams' Greatest Hits, the original, not the junior. So, and some of these I love. I'm so lonesome I could cry. The Jimi Hendrix Experience, sealed from 2014. So this must have been a remix.
Yeah, reissue.
And let's see, a couple dollar albums, Mark Robinson's Adios Amigos, the Songs of Robbins. And then I talked about these, I think, in a podcast, and they dropped money for it. Charles Manson, Live at San Quentin, 1983, sealed. And Charles Manson Trees, which I guess is part 1 of a 4-part album. So, yeah, I think he was happy we stopped by. I didn't. He has newer, higher price stuff, but I didn't have my comic list with me. I figured I was just, if I'd have gone myself, I'd have spent more time just digging through the stuff. And like usual, he always has stuff coming in. The guy knows his comics, he knows his albums, he knows his consoles. He's talking video games. Matter of fact, he was lamenting the fact that he got one guy who was all pissed at him, left a negative comment on either Facebook or Yelp or whatever, because he was busy talking with his customer and talking. This guy was just standing. Finally, and he said it was only like 2-3 minutes, but it probably was 10 minutes retail time, because when you're waiting in line, it takes forever. The guy just put his whatever down and left. And I told him, I said, yeah, you got to learn that mix when you're busy talking with someone. Just interrupt, get the next guy over. Because you want to be friendly, especially if you only see people a few times a week, but you also got to make the sales. So, anyways, I'll be back one of these days. I'll drag you and Butch up there, Cory. And like I said, we always have geeking planned out, so should be fun. But that's pretty much it for me.
Believe it or not, kids, we've got this episode all set up so that Joe could go on a 3-day vacation, 4-day vacation?
Yeah, I get to celebrate my birthday by going to work, and then we're just heading up to the North Shore for 3 days.
On a 3-hour tour.
A 3-hour. And Lake Superior didn't ice over this year.
Oh.
There's all sorts of weird consequences for wildlife and shorelines, which means the shoreline gets like 3 to 4 extra months of erosion to it.
Some pictures I've seen, it's like there's ice along the shoreline because the water is going up, and because it's not moving once it hits, it just kind of freezes there. And that's always fascinating to me, because most lakes don't have waves.
And I'm not even sure, like, the touristy stuff that's open. The ski area, of course, should be rocking. And but we're just going to go up, hang out. If the weather's bad, we're just going to hang inside. It looks like it's going to be good. If not, we'll probably just drive and try to hit some shops at, there's Collector Connection in Duluth. There's that thrift store up in Grand Marais that always has comics. There's, of course, Northern Winery. I should check. I might need more cider. Cider infusion, stat! But just kind of a way to get away for a little bit. And then we'll be back in time for the 500th episode.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
And we all know how fish get high. Seaweed. Hey, you just thought because this was a pseudo fill-in, I was going to let it go, huh? Yep. Well, I got to run because I lost the buttonhole today. Cory, hit my music.